Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're zooming in on something you wrestle with every day.
Oh, tell me about it.
Using macular OCT to spot glaucoma progression.
Yep.
We're dissecting a paper called Detection of Glaucoma Deterioration in the Macular Region with Optical Coherence Tomography. Challenges and Solutions.
Catchy title, right.
Get ready for some aha moments. The kind that might just change your approach.
You know what's so crucial about macular OCT?
What?
It's checking the health of those retinal ganglion cells smack dab in the macula.
Yeah.
You know, the cells responsible for that sharp central vision our patients love.
Can't live without them.
Right. And this paper, it's not just some boring review.
Oh, no.
Nope. It gives you practical strategies to fine-tune your macular OCT game.
So we can catch those sneaky signs of progression earlier.
Exactly.
Speaking of sneaky, the paper dives right into the first hurdle, variability in macular OCT measurements.
It's like trying to hit a moving target.
Some patients are consistent, others not so much.
Oh, I know it. And that variability, it comes from everywhere.
Like where?
Well, how the patient's head is tilted during the scan, the quality of their tears.
Even other retinal conditions can mess things up.
It's a jungle out there.
And then there's the nature of glaucoma itself, progressing so gradually.
Like watching paint dry.
Finding those changes can feel impossible.
That's where these repeated measures, random effects models come in.
The what now?
Fancy name, but basically they help us create a growth chart for each patient's macula.
Like a personalized one?
Yep. It shows us not just their baseline, but how it's changing over time.
So we could say with more certainty whether they're stable or progressing?
Precisely.
That's amazing. But hold on. We can't forget about good old aging.
Affects everything, doesn't it?
The macula is no exception.
And here's the thing. That age-related ganglion cell loss, it's not uniform.
What do you mean?
Picture the macula like a city. Some neighborhoods age faster than others.
Okay, I'm following you.
The areas that start with more retinal ganglion cells actually thin out faster over time.
Interesting. So using data from normal eyes to adjust for age in our glaucoma patients wouldn't be accurate.
Right. We could really underestimate their true rate of progression.
Well, that's a scary thought.
It is. And get this, research by Tong and others shows this age-related thinning often clusters in a pericentral pattern.
Like in those city neighborhoods you mentioned.
Exactly. The more crowded areas change the most.
Makes sense. The paper linked that to Yoshioka's work on normalized rates of change and Chauhan's findings on age-related change and average thickness.
It all fits together, doesn't it?
It does. It really highlights how important it is to consider each patient's baseline thickness and those age-related changes when we're looking at their macular OCT results.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, now for something that really made me think, the paper talks about a debate.
Ooh, I love a good debate.
About whether histological studies always show that age-related ganglion cell loss. Some do, some don't. Makes you wonder if there's something else at play that we haven't figured out yet.
That's the beauty of science. Always more to discover.
And speaking of assumptions, we often assume a linear rate of decline in the macula.
Yeah, like a straight line down.
But what if it's not always so straightforward?
Maybe more like a roller coaster.
Exactly. We have to be careful about those assumptions, right?
Absolutely. Glaucoma's complex, and every patient's different.
Let's switch gears to a more practical challenge. Defining regions of interest, or ROIs, for analyzing glaucoma progression.
Ah, yes, ROIs. Right now, there's no one-size-fits-all method for defining them. No magic formula yet.
No easy button, huh?
Not yet. But the paper points to Hood's manual ROI approach as promising.
Okay, interesting. And how does that relate to the concept of the measurement floor?
Well, once a measurement hits that floor, it's like hitting a wall.
Can't see any further changes.
Exactly. But ROIs, they could help us focus on areas where change is still detectable.
Like a spotlight, showing us the most important information.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, what about functional testing? We have the trusty 10-2 visual field, but does it really capture those subtle central vision changes we see in glaucoma?
You know, it's like trying to explore a whole world with just a tiny flashlight.
You might miss some details.
Exactly. We need better tools to find those early functional losses in the macula.
I was going to ask if there were any advancements in functional testing that you're excited about.
Oh, absolutely. There are some really cool technologies on the horizon.
Like what?
Some can map central vision with much more detail and sensitivity.
Wow.
And some even use virtual reality.
Seriously?
Yeah, makes testing more fun and accurate.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Me too.
Speaking of needing an upgrade, data visualization could use some work. Current software leaves me wanting.
It's like having a treasure chest, but you can't find the key.
We need software that doesn't just show the data, but helps us make sense of it.
Especially since not all macular outcome measures are created equal for detecting progression.
Right. The paper mentions that ganglion cell complex thickness, or GCC, might be more sensitive in certain cases.
Absolutely. Particularly with advanced damage, GCC can give you insights you wouldn't get otherwise.
Like looking through a magnifying glass.
Exactly.
And the paper even hinted at some preliminary findings,
Oh,
suggesting that trend analysis within macular superpixels could outperform traditional methods for detecting change.
that's fascinating.
Like having a higher resolution image, right? Seeing details we might have missed before.
Superpixels are like these tiny pieces of the puzzle. By looking at the trends within them, we might catch changes earlier and more precisely.
It makes sense. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where that research goes.
Me too.
But speaking of pushing boundaries, macular thickness isn't the only story, is it? Tissue density and OCT angiography, or OCTA, are emerging as potential biomarkers,
We're moving beyond just thickness and exploring the macula's inner workings.
like peeking under the hood.
Exactly. OCTA, in particular, lets us see the vascular network, a whole new level of information.
So it's not just about how thick it is, but how well the blood vessels are working.
Precisely. And there's research by Shoji showing that OCTA might detect vessel density changes even when GCC thickness stays the same.
So we could see those early vascular signs of glaucoma before any structural changes on regular OCT.
Exactly. That could be a real game changer.
I like it. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's talk about myopia. Macular OCT in myopic patients is a whole different ballgame, right?
Oh, yeah. Myopia throws a wrench in the works.
Like trying to read a map that's been crumpled up.
We have to be extra careful when interpreting macular OCT in these patients.
Of course, the shape and tilt of the posterior pole in some myopic eyes, that can throw off thickness measurements over time, too.
It's a real puzzle. We need to consider all the pieces, like axial length and fundus photos, to make the right call.
I couldn't agree more. We've uncovered a lot of challenges already, and we're just getting started. But don't worry, listeners, because this paper doesn't just leave us with problems and no solutions.
Oh no! We have a whole toolbox of solutions to explore.
After a quick break, we'll dive into those promising strategies and technologies that are paving the way for more accurate and personalized glaucoma management using macular OCT.
Stay tuned. It's going to be good.
So we've climbed Mount Challenge and explored the Valley of Variability. But this paper doesn't just leave us stranded. It actually offers some pretty cool solutions. What catches your eye?
You know, sometimes it's the simplest things we overlook, like head positioning. This paper really hammers that home.
Ah, yes, head positioning.
Making sure the head is straight, no tilt or rotation during the scan, it can make a huge difference in how reliable those measurements are.
I can definitely picture that, like adjusting your telescope before you start stargazing.
Exactly. A tiny tweak can change everything.
I've seen so many wonky OCTs where the little head tilt threw everything off. Drives me crazy. But the paper did mention that they're working on new sensor-based devices to help with this.
Oh yeah, those are exciting. Imagine a world without blurry, unreliable scans.
That would be amazing.
These systems can pick up even the tiniest head movements and adjust the scan in real time, like having image stabilization built right in.
Okay, so head positioning, check. What about dealing with those patients whose measurements are all over the place?
Ah, you mean the outliers?
Yes. How do we account for that individual variability?
Well, that's where personalized medicine comes in. By taking multiple measurements early on, we can figure out how much variability there is within each eye.
Like establishing a personal normal range for them.
Exactly. And then we can create these prediction intervals tailored to that patient.
So instead of just using general averages, we're taking their unique quirks into account.
Precisely. It helps us avoid those false alarms, thinking something's progressing when it's just normal fluctuation for that person.
That makes a lot of sense. Now let's tackle software. There's definitely room for improvement there. What would smarter software look like in your dream world?
Ooh, let's see. I want software that can automatically calculate those personalized prediction intervals. No more manual calculations.
That would save so much time.
Right, and I want to be able to visualize changes at different zoom levels, like zoom in and out of the macula, really see what's going on.
Like a high-powered microscope that can also analyze the data and point out the important stuff.
Exactly, and I want real-time trend analysis with customizable superpixel sizes or clusters so we can focus on specific areas.
That would be incredibly useful. But we need to make sure this software is easy to use. for both clinicians and statisticians.
Oh, absolutely. User-friendly design is key. And any decent algorithm has to be able to handle both thickening and thinning. We can't miss any clues.
That's a really important point. Glaucoma can be unpredictable.
Exactly. Let the data guide us, not our assumptions. And that brings us to one of the most exciting areas, artificial intelligence. AI has the power to completely change how we diagnose, treat, and monitor glaucoma.
I was just thinking about that. It seems like AI is everywhere, and this paper hinted at its potential for glaucoma. But how do we actually use it in a practical way?
Well, one way is using it to predict how a patient's vision might change over time.
Like into the future?
Yep. There's this study by Burchak that showed how deep learning models could actually make visual field predictions based on RNFL thickness.
So we could use AI to predict what their visual field will look like based on their current structure.
That's the idea. And this is just the beginning. In our own lab, we're researching how AI could connect structure and function in the macula, make those predictions even more accurate, and maybe even help us detect progression earlier.
That's incredible. It sounds like AI could bring a whole new level of precision and personalization to glaucoma management.
Absolutely. Imagine tailoring treatment plans based on individual risk factors, genetics, even lifestyle.
And imagine being able to monitor progression so accurately that we can step in before any vision loss becomes permanent.
That's the future we're working towards.
All this sounds fantastic, but are there any potential downsides or ethical considerations we should be thinking about? We have to make sure we're using this technology responsibly for our patients' benefit.
That's such an important point. Like any powerful tool, we have to be careful. We need to safeguard patient privacy, make sure algorithms are developed ethically, and never forget the human element in medicine. AI should help us, not replace us.
Right. It's about finding the right balance.
Exactly. Using technology to improve our care, give patients more knowledge and options, and ultimately protect their vision.
Well said. So we've climbed the solutions summit, but I bet there are more mountains to conquer in the world of glaucoma. But for now, let's take a moment to think about what we've learned today and how we can apply it in our clinics. Okay, so we've climbed those mountains of challenges and explored all those potential solutions. But how does this all actually help our listeners out there in the real world dealing with glaucoma day in and day out?
I think the big takeaway is that macular ACT, it's a powerful tool.
Agreed.
But like any fancy gadget, you've got to know how to use
You
it.
can't just press a button and expect magic.
Right. We need to understand its limitations
Stay up to date.
and always be looking for ways to make it more accurate.
It's like one of those high-end espresso machines.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You can have the best equipment, but if you don't know what you're doing...
Disaster.
Exactly. And it's not just about the technology. It's about us, the clinicians, and how we interpret the data.
We can't just look at numbers on a screen.
We need to understand what those numbers really mean.
We got to become like macular detectives,
Ooh, I like that.
carefully examining the clues,
Weighing the evidence.
coming up with a solid diagnosis and treatment plan.
Spot on. And that leads me to something that's been on my mind. We've talked a lot about how individual variability in patients can make it hard to see changes.
Yeah.
But what about variability in how WE, as clinicians, interpret those changes?
That's a great point. Even with all this amazing technology, there's still a human element to it, our own judgment.
Right. And maybe that's the next big step in improving glaucoma care. Figuring out how to make our interpretations more consistent, less subjective.
Standardizing things, so to speak.
Exactly. Imagine if all eye care providers were on the same page when it came to macular OCT.
That would be amazing. We could collaborate better, share knowledge more easily.
And ultimately, give our patients the best care possible.
It's a goal worth shooting for. And I think these deep dives into the research, talking about the challenges and solutions, that's how we get there.
Couldn't agree more. A huge thanks to everyone for joining us on this journey through the world of macular OCT. We covered a lot. Variability, aging, personalized medicine, AI.
That's been quite a ride.
We hope you've learned some valuable things you can use in your own practice.
Absolutely. Remember, learning never stops. Stay curious.
And don't be afraid to question the way things are done. That's how we make progress.
Well said.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep up the fight against glaucoma. And of course, a special shout out to all the maculas out there. We're doing our best to keep you healthy and seeing sharp for years to come.
You bet.